So, in just a moment, we're going to invite Rabbi Dalia here to give us a grounding into this extraordinary moment we're in. When we chose the theme face to face for this year, it was still July of last summer. And we quickly realized as the months turned into agonizing long months that face to face is exactly the conversation we need to have this year. And so we had the honor of meeting Maoz and Aziz, along with many other peacemakers who are doing the work. Those of you who are with us for Rosh Hashanah met Marwa, Amira, Dorit, and Shira, the women of vision, who sang and prayed with us. And I'm glad that Marwa is with us tonight. And I really want, before I invite Rabbi Dalia, who, as my partner in Rabbis for Human Rights, is doing so much holy work on the ground in Israel and Palestine, and is here with us tonight to ground us in song. I want to really thank my dear, dear friend, Libby Lenkinski, who is not only an amazing lab shul and helped us open the Ark tonight as a peacemaker, but is also wearing the double hats tonight of representing the New Israel Fund, that is a proud sponsor of tonight's program, and also ALBI, the new exciting fund that makes sure that we make peace happen through arts, through culture, through all the ways in which we open our hearts. Libby, thank you. Thank you for ALBI. Thank you for the NIF. Thank you for everything and all you are, dear sister. So I want to invite Talia up here, and then we'll have Maoz and Aziz and open for tonight's conversation. Thank you for staying with us. But now, please join me in welcoming Maoz Inon and Aziz Abu Sara to the stage.
Hi everyone. It's okay? You can hear me? Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah? Okay. Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay,
Yeah.
that's enough. You could hear me for 9 hours flight. We took just this noon from Switzerland here, and we're still sitting next to each other.
I did take a shower. It helped.
Thank you, Izar. He took a shower. Um, so I lost my parents. I lost both my parents just last year on October 7th. And I won Aziz. And I won so many brothers and sisters, Israelis, Palestinians, from all over the world. I won you. I won you. I won this moment that I'm able to be part of your community. It's a huge winning. It's a huge winning. And I won so many lessons and knowledge that we will try to share with you in the next 45, 60 minutes, and I hope there will be time also for some questioning and open discussion. And everything that was going on in the last 2 hours on this stage with you, with this beautiful community, is echoing and resonancing in so many levels that I cannot even start to explain. But I will start to say first with the amazing mandala of Eitan Kedmi. Eitan was my mom, Bila, mandala master. Eitan was my neighbor in Binyamina. When we moved to Binyamina in 2006, Eitan was our neighbor, and that's how my mom met him. And that's why and how she started painting mandala. And when I saw the invitation, when Amichai sent me the invitation for the New Year, the Shana Tova, and I recognized the Eitan works. So I was really very much. It was very powerful and meaningful for me. And also later there are many mandalas, posters of this mandala that will speak about it later. This is the only mandala my mom gave me. From the 1,000 she painted, I received only this one, and it's I'm probably not gonna get any more. All our dreams, כל החלומות שלנו יכולים להתגשם אם יהיה לנו אומץ לרדוף אחריהם. All our dreams can be fulfilled if we have the courage to chase them. And in order to fulfill our dreams, we must have partners. And I could not choose or find a better and a more courageous and amazing partner than Aziz. So Aziz, I think it's the first act for tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is my first Yom Kippur temple experience, I guess, or Shul experience, and it was incredible. I was thinking halfway through, if I lived in New York City, I'd probably come here quite often. So the music was amazing, the message was incredible, and yeah, I'm just glad to be here with you today, the two of us, and like Maoz, I also lost my brother in the first Intifada. And unlike Maoz, it took me 8 years to get to where I am today. It took me 8 years to move past wanting revenge, wanting to make those who killed my brother pay the price. And only 8 years later, I got to a point where I realized how important it is to move past bitterness, the desire for revenge, hate, all these things. And those are all very natural, normal feelings. I think denying that they exist is unrealistic. So we'll talk also a little bit about that, but since then I've been working and finding ways to bring Israelis and Palestinians together, other people in other conflict zones also together. And in the last year when Maoz's parents were killed, I reached out to him because I felt it's important to do so, to just say, I'm sorry, want to offer condolences, I care, I love you. And I honestly didn't expect a response back, but immediately I got a response back. Within a few weeks we were talking, and then a couple of weeks after we were doing stuff together. And that's how this friendship, relationship started. But I wanted to start with something we've heard a few times today, is that power of empathy, which I think in the last year feels that it's been lost on so many people. The power of saying, I care about you. The power of saying, I'm not gonna check your religion, your ethnicity, your color, your nationality before I decide if I care about you or not. And doing it regardless of who the perpetrators and who the victims are. And that's how our relationship really started. We've met before for a few minutes, but really got to know each other through me first reaching out, but also Maoz's response saying, and this was, like I said, just recently, days, weeks after his parents were killed, one of his first responses to me was, I'm not only crying for my parents, I'm also crying for every child that is being killed in Gaza. And to have that power of empathy coming from both sides is really how we became friends.
And at the beginning, I was interviewed basically just after we ended the Shiva. I started a series of interviews and public speaking, And at the beginning, I would usually open by saying that nothing can prepare you. Nothing can prepare you, or anyone here in this beautiful hall. Nothing can prepare you to losing both your parents, so many of your childhood friends, their parents, their children that will be killed or kidnapped to Gaza. How can you be prepared? By then, I think in December, I realized that all my life was just a preparation to know exactly what to say, what to do, and how to act, and not just me, but my siblings, when this tragedy will happen. And ironically, and it's very sad, and sadly, we were prepared by our parents. Our parents prepared us for this moment. And I share with you the mandala of my mom, and I will show you some stories of my father. And please, if I forget, at the end, I have in this bottle the formula how we're gonna make peace by 2030. Don't laugh, this is serious. That's the serious part, okay? In this bottle, there is the formula how we're gonna make peace by 2030. So if I forget, remind me. I need only a minute. I need only a minute to explain that. So 3 days after October 7th, my young brother, Magen, asked the family. Every morning of the Shiva, we started just the 5 siblings. Then so many people came, and in the evening with our partners and grandchildren. So the second day of the Shiva, my young brother asked the family to send a universal message that we are seeking no revenge. That no matter what, we don't want to revenge the death of our parents, because it's not going to bring them back to life, and that it will only escalate the cycle of death, of bloodshed, of fear and hate that has been going on for a century. And that same night, I had a dream, and I will share it with you. And Dalia, you're still here? Yeah, Dalia, thank you. So I was thinking maybe I won't, but Dalia encouraged me to share it. In my dream, I could see all of you. I could see the entire humanity, and we were all crying. We were all crying, and our bodies were wounded from the war. They were broken, they were burned. And at the ground, you could not see anything, you could see only blood. And we were all crying. And as our tears started going down our face and down to our bodies, and we kept crying, and our tears washed our bodies and healed them and cured our bodies. And then our bodies become, it was one piece. We were whole again and healthy. And we kept crying, and our tears went from our bodies. After healing, our bodies went down to the ground and start washing the blood from the ground. And as we cried, the ground started being purified and clean and shining and beautiful. And then on this amazing ground, I could see a path. I could see a path. The path to peace and reconciliation. And I've decided that in order to cure myself, to save myself from the ocean, I was drowning in an ocean of sorrow and pain. I was broken into so many, like 1,000 pieces. So in order to cure myself, I've decided to choose this path, the path to peace and reconciliation. And on this path, not just that Aziz and I become great friends and partners, I learned that peace is possible. Peace is possible. If Amichai would give me only 3 words to say here tonight, they will be, peace is possible. And in order to harvest peace by 2030, no later, in order to harvest peace, we must sow 3 seeds. The seeds of hope, the seeds of the future, and the most rare and expensive and unique seeds of forgiveness. And now in Yom Kippur, like we are asking forgiveness from those who harmed, right? Right? Yeah, from those we harmed. And what Aziz and I want to suggest you to act the same way we do is to forgive to forgive those who harmed us. Because what I learned from Aziz is that the power of forgiveness is is like a nuclear power. It's so it can transform and change so much. And I think Aziz, maybe teach them what you taught me about forgiveness.
Thank you. I think when I was 18 years old, as I said, I went through a transformation. And my transformation started by, for the first time, meeting Israelis and Jews who were not soldiers and were not settlers, and having a normal conversation. And in that classroom, I realized something that when I was 10 years old, I couldn't, I think, comprehend. And that's the person who killed my brother didn't just kill my brother, he enslaved me. By every decision I made between 10 to 18 years old, I was being a slave to that person. Every decision was a reaction, was not my decision. I was reacting to what that person has done. And at that point, I realized that I need to free myself. I need to free myself from that yoke, from those chains, and to be able to make my own decisions. And suddenly, forgiveness didn't feel as hard. Often when we talk about forgiving somebody, it's like there is a lot of struggle we go through. But suddenly realizing it's a freeing thing. It things that gives you power rather than takes away from you. It gives you freedom rather than restricting you. And actually, it's the opposite. Every time you choose to hate, you are being restricted. You are being held against your will. You are being just reactionary. And so that's the power that Maoz is talking about, is the moment you're able to forgive, just so much you can do. Because reconciliation, you can argue, you need two sides to reconcile. But forgiveness, you don't. You can forgive anyone at any point, even if they do not come and ask for that forgiveness. And I understand it's not an easy concept, but like Maoz has just said, it is a powerful concept. Now, and I want to say it exists in Judaism, exists in Christianity, exists in Islam. One of my favorite, there's those stories and verses always in each religion that you like, but you also struggle with because you're like, it's a bit too much. And there's one of those there's a couple of stories that come from Islam. I thought maybe you don't hear as many of the Islamic stories. I'll share some of those with you. But there's one story that says that on the last day, the judgment day, when God brings everybody and he starts judging between people, that his mercy will go so far and his forgiveness will go so far that even Satan himself will have hope in God's forgiveness. And I remember the first time I read that, I'm like, are you kidding me? But that's the power of forgiveness again, that even Satan was watching that, saying, wow, this is what God is doing. Maybe even I can get forgiveness. So when I thought of them, like, if that's the forgiveness we get, then that's a forgiveness we ought to give. And the second story is about when the prophet was in his, when the prophet had a guy who was in his deathbed, who was the chief of what was called in those days the hypocrites. It's people who claim to be Muslims, but this guy was working all the time against the prophet specifically. And he was very bad. He did so many things to hurt him, spread rumors, tried to divide people, did just tons of bad things. And as he was dying, he asked if the prophet could visit him. And so he goes and he visits him and he goes, can I have your shirt as a gift? And some people believe that the prophet's shirt might have some special powers, so he told him, yes, I can give it to you. He takes it off, he gives it to him, and he says, can you come to my funeral and pray for me when I die, the funeral prayer? And the other believers said, no, you can't. This guy is awful. If you go and pray for him, with him, you're showing that you're willing to forgive such an awful person. And the prophet said, if I know God will forgive him, I will not just go to pray for him, I am going to even petition God 70 times so he can be forgiven. And that's, again, those stories, and I grew up with these stories that honestly, I still remember one of my first school homework I had to do. I had to write this kind of, I don't know, a statement to take to school, and it was 2 words. Unfortunately, there's no way to translate it to English in 2 words, and it said, religion is about how you act, basically. In Arabic, ad-dinu mu'amala. And this is what we going back to it. Who we are is what do we decide to do with the power we have. And forgiveness is a very powerful tool that we can use to transform ourselves.
Yeah. When I heard we have another amazing friend, Hamza Awaude, is a Palestinian peace activist, and I heard him saying that he's willing to forgive about the past, he's willing to forgive about the present, but he would not and cannot forgive about the future. And that's why also like 2 months after losing my parents, and I asked myself, what does it mean if like to forgive about the past and the present? Who shall I forgive in order to be able to build or to resource myself into the future? So I asked those questions, and the immediate answer was that I need to forgive those who killed my parents. I need to forgive Hamas. In my narrative, Hamas is a fundamental extremist organization that is killing and oppressing his own people. And innocent people, if they are Israeli Jews, even better. On October 7th, Hamas was acting upon its nature. So it was relatively easy for me to forgive Hamas. But I was seeking revenge. I wanted to punish. I want them to pay the price. Those who I believe are accountable for my parents' death. Those who promised my parents again and again. We have no time to say again and again tonight. Again and again, they promised us security and safety. Security and safety. The Israeli government. And they totally failed in their promise. I wanted to punish them. I was seeking revenge. But those feelings destroyed me from the inside. I stopped functioning as a father. I stopped functioning as a husband. I stopped functioning as a friend. I was just focusing how I'm going to make them pay. But after listening to Hamza, I realized that in order to free myself and in order to be able to build the future, I must forgive the Israeli government. And it's a decision I took on myself. I totally forgive them. I totally forgive them. And Aziz, I think maybe we can read the poem of I have it. It's yeah.
You can start and I'll find it.
No, I have it. I have it. You can tell about Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali is a Palestinian poet. He is one of the most well-known Palestine, and he wrote. We just met his son. Rabbi Amichai was with us. We met his son in Nazareth and got to learn even more about him. Fascinating character, and he wrote a poem about revenge and a person who wanted to seek revenge. And this is his journey for revenge. So we will read it for you.
I'll start. At times I wish I could meet in a duel the man who killed my father and raised our home, expelling me into a narrow country. And if he killed me, I would rest at last. And if I were ready, I would take my revenge.
But if it came to light when my rival appeared, that he had a mother waiting for him or a father who'd put his right hand over the heart's place in his chest whenever his son was late, even by just a quarter hour for a meeting that's set, then I would not kill him even if I could.
Likewise, I would not murder him if it were soon made clear that he had a brother or sisters who loved him and constantly longed to see him, or if he had a wife to greet him and children who could not bear his absence and whom his gift would thrill, or if he had friends or companions, neighbors he knew, or allies from prison, or a hospital room, or classmates from his school asking about him and sending him regards.
But if he turned out to be on his own, cut off like a branch from a tree, without a mother or a father, without neither a brother nor sister, wifeless, without a child, and without kin or neighbors or friends, colleagues or companions, then I would add not a thing to his pain. Within that loneliness, not the torment of death, and not the sorrow of passing away. Instead, I'd be content to ignore him when I passed by him on a street, as I convinced myself that paying him no attention in itself was a kind of revenge.
And I do this talk also in many high schools or with Jewish Israelis communities. And the question that I keep asking again and again is, but we have no partners. We have no partners. So when I have this question, when I'm asked this question, I'm reading this poet and I'm telling them that the son and daughter and the family of Muhammad Ali, they are our partners. They are our partners. And we have so many partners, but we just must start looking to them in the eyes, face to face, and start working together. And I also, like, after we sow the seed of forgiveness, I think it's time for the seed of hope. Because hope is not something you can find or not something you can lose. Hope is an action. Hope is something we do together. We do it together with others, and this is what I want to invite us all to make hope together tonight. And it's very simple to make hope. It's very simple. We make hope by envisioning a better future and by acting to make it into reality. That's it. But we need to be very honest with ourselves to check if our actions are effective. If they are effective, it's amazing. We're going to reach this future. But if not, they are not. It's not a reason to give up. It's not a reason to fall into despair. It's just a reason to change our action till we find the one that is effective. And basically now, when people are asking Aziz and me, what are you doing nowadays? What are you doing? So we tell them, we are making hope. We are making hope together.
I think there is nothing that scares people who want war, people who want hate, people who want an endless cycle of violence, than an example that shows that there is an alternative. And us being here together, modeling that an alternative is possible, that there is a different path. If you listen to politicians, you will think there is no one, and this is often, who's gonna lead, who's gonna talk, who's gonna show us the way forward? And unless we take it on ourselves to show that there is an alternative, there is a path forward, no one else will believe it. The problem is not that there aren't enough people working for peace. The problem isn't that there aren't enough people who believe in peace. There are a lot of people. Most of us do. I think if you go in Israel and Palestine, if you go in the US, most people believe in peace. The problem is how many of us have lost the faith that we can make it happen. And there are a lot of research on that. You'd be surprised to know that most research shows that 3.5% of continuously active people working for a cause can make it happen. 3.5%. Our challenge isn't convincing people that peace is possible. Our challenge is convincing them to work with us to make it possible. And those are two different things. But to do that, we have to also be honest with each other. You know, we talked today about forgiveness, but we also should talk about, as we working together, to give each other a lot of grace, to give each other a lot of benefit of the doubt. We spend a lot of time together. If we don't do that, this relationship would not last long.
Maybe too much. If you ask our wife, we are spending way too much with each other. Way too much.
There's competition now. But also it means we're gonna say the wrong thing at some times. We're gonna ask the wrong questions at some times. We're gonna hurt each other at some times. And true partners, working for peace, assuming that that's not gonna happen, is unrealistic. If we are in this path together, we need to assume this is gonna happen. And I'll give you one quick example of my dad. Some of you have heard me tell this story before. My dad coming to the first peace gathering that I invited him to, where I was running the organization that invited him, sat through the meeting, and at the end of it, they asked if anybody had a question. And obviously he was the first to raise his hand because he thought, why not embarrass my son in his work? And his question was, did the Holocaust really happen? He did manage to embarrass me at my work. And he kept digging. He didn't just stop there. Did it really happen? And he started giving all kind of explanations. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, why did I invite him? I didn't need my dad to believe in peace. It's okay. He could have stayed home. But here's the thing. Everyone was silent. Nobody knew how to answer him. And we were in a gathering. A couple hundred peace activists were there. And everyone's thinking, I'm not touching this question. Palestinians and Israelis. Until a man who's been a mentor and a colleague, Rami al-Hanan, stood up, whose daughter was killed in a suicide bombing, and said, you know what? I shouldn't expect you to believe in something you didn't learn about. It's okay. Yes, it's an offensive question. Maybe the way my dad said it was offensive, but he gave him so much grace. And he said, my father was a Holocaust survivor who was in Auschwitz. I will have him take you to Yad Vashem, to the Holocaust Memorial, and show you himself there and tell you his story. And what's incredible, not only did my dad agree, 70 other Palestinians in the room said, you know what, we had the same question, but we didn't want to offend anyone. We didn't want to start a problem, so we kept it. So we want to go as well. And they ended up all going with Rami's dad and two other Holocaust survivors. And it started a project where the same things are going back and forth between the Israelis and the Palestinians in the organization. And I keep thinking, if my dad wasn't willing to ask the offensive question, and if Rami wasn't willing to give grace when the question didn't come out in a nice way, what would have happened? We still would have met in a conference room and talked about peace, but in our hearts, we wouldn't have had that peace.
Yeah. I'm wondering with myself where to take it from now, from here. I have two directions. So, in the last 20 years, I've been fulfilling dreams. This is what I was doing. I dreamed about traveling around the world, so I've done it twice. I dreamed about hiking the Shul Israel National Trail, so Shlomit and I, my wife, we hiked it. We dreamed together to open the first guest house ever in the old city of Nazareth. We have done it. We opened the Fauzi Azar Inn back in 2005. We dream about a network of hostels throughout the country. We've done it, Abraham Hostel and Tours. Every time we had an idea, basically we made it into a reality. And what I learned within 20 years of relationship and building partnership and becoming one of the community members in Nazareth, the largest Palestinian city within Israel, not just a community member, a leaders of the community, what I realized is that the first step in order to reach a shared society, a shared future, is to knowing the other side narrative. Exactly like your father basically initiate. And if we don't know the other side narrative, his pain, his sorrow, his agony, his challenges, and dreams and aspiration, will keep living within the walls, physical and mental walls that we were born enslaved to be inside. So we must learn about the other. And Aziz and I, we are writing a book now with Crown Publishing House. They're sitting somewhere here in Broadway, I think, 57. We are writing a book, and we have done a week research in
tour.
Palestine, Israel. It's a week research, a tour that Aziz and I are guiding the tour. That's how the book will be built. And the future.
It's a working title.
It's a working
It's The
title.
Future is Peace.
The future is peace. Yes.
I guess maybe it's a real title, considering your response.
And it has 4 layers: the theological and historical layer, 100 years of conflict, our relationship, and the future. And when we've been to Jaffa, and we were overlooking the Andromeda rock, and we came to think that humanity, been sacrificing our loved one since the beginning of civilization, and we didn't stop it yet. We didn't stop it. And in the Greek mythology, Andromeda was saved by Perseus, the son of Zeus, and he saved Andromeda by beheading the head of Medusa. And when the monster came up from the sea, he showed her the head of Medusa and the eyes of Medusa, and then the monster was killed. Okay, you know this Greek mythology? Okay, amazing. It's false. It's a lie. It's a lie. The only way to kill a monster is by looking to her in the eye. When we look in the monster's eye, we look to her face to face. We start dialoguing with her. We start showing empathy. We start listening to her story. We would learn that Medusa wasn't born a monster. No, she didn't. She was born a beautiful Greek girl that was raped in Athens temple. Her trauma wasn't cured, wasn't treated, wasn't healed. The contrary, she was cursed. This is how she became a monster. But we can kill this monster by looking to her in the eye. And this is when I saw this invitation to the Lab Shul New Year, and for tonight, I said, we must be here. We must be in the stage. So thank you for inviting us. Give us 5 more minutes. Yes, we enjoyed it, guys.
As Rabbi Amichai knows, we can go on for 7 hours straight. He was with us in Nazareth, and we had to skip lunch so we can finish all the things we wanted to talk about. But yeah, we can skip dinner and just keep going. Give me 2 minutes, and then Maoz will talk about the bottle, and then we'll talk to you and have your thoughts and your questions. But I think for this story of the power of who's your partner and can we really get to peace or not, when we were in Jaffa as well, Jaffa was a very monumental place for us. And there's another story in Jaffa of a man named Jonah, which exists the same story in Islam and in Judaism. And Jonah was asked to go and talk to the most evil people ever. That's the concept of it. They were known being so bad that they skinned people alive. And it's very important to tell you how bad they are, because often when I talk to Palestinians or I talk to Israelis, the concept is of people we perceive, but that enemy is much worse than any other enemy, and therefore we can never have peace with them. And the story of Jonah tells you that his enemies were much worse than anything you can even imagine. And when he was sent to go and preach to them peace, that's literally the message he was sent with: stop killing people and make peace. He didn't want to do it because he believed they must be punished. He didn't want them to repent. He didn't want them to change. He didn't want them to find the path forward. And when he did go eventually, you know, he had to have a big detour to end up there. First go the opposite direction, end up in the water, end up in the big fish belly for a few days. But eventually he ended up there. They did change. And it took one person to do that. One person who didn't even have full faith in them. And that change happened. And that story is quite powerful. And then you look at every story of every person we admire in history, whether it's from religion or culture or politics or so on, none of them believed in change and did nothing about it. You're going to start with Abraham. He was told, leave. He got out. He didn't stay home. You go to Moshe, to Moses, same thing. You go to Muhammad, same thing. You go to Jesus, same thing. You go to Mandela, same thing. You go to Martin Luther King, same thing. None of the people we really respect for their work, for peacemaking, for prophecy, for preaching, none of them said, I just believe the world will be better, and then sat home and had good vibes. It all started with get out of your house. Peacemaking doesn't happen only in conference rooms. It helps to meet and talk, but it's not the only place it happens. And that's a part of the 3.5% I keep coming back to, and maybe it's time to talk about the bottom.
Before I will sow the seeds of hope, and then I'll go to this to the formula. So we already saw forgiveness. We saw hope. Now we saw the future. The future is where Israelis and Palestinians meet. Okay, even though now we are as far from each other as ever. It was the bloodiest year of the conflict. And the horrors, the image, the pain is keep coming and escalating. But in the future we meet. A future that is based on shared acknowledgement and recognition, equality and dignity, reconciliation and healing, security and safety. And if we'll be a good farmers like my father, which in a second I'm going to tell you what an amazing farmer he was, we're going to harvest peace by 2030. So what is it in this battle? This,
I know.
You know, okay. And Gili know, and Yael knows. It's an Israeli oil sesame. Israel oil sesame. Now, sesame is harvested by hand. There are millions of hectares of sesame being cultivated all over the globe that all being harvested by hand. So my father, who was again admirable, the best farmer in Israel, and that's serious, okay? That's a proof. We proved that already. And his partner was my classmate. When my classmate Asaf graduated from his master degree in agronomy, he partnered with my father. And then in 2008, Asaf is going to Ethiopia to learn about the sesame. And he's coming back and he's telling my father, Yacobi, you don't believe it. They harvest by hand like this. only for the consumption in Israel, 200,000 hectares are being cultivated in Ethiopia. And the production for acre is very, very low. So it doesn't, it's not profitable to build the machinery, or if there was a machinery to operate it, because it's produced so little sesame. So they start dreaming. Okay, the first step in the formula is dreaming. They start dreaming of a miraculous, imagine a dream sesame type that will produce high production and will be able to cultivate it to harvest by a machine. It's something humanity was never able to achieve. Peace, we achieved so many times. Who was talking about Sadat visit? Amichai, it was you?
No, it was David. Was
David, you spoke about. So I was born 2 years before you wrote the song and Sadat visit. But I know that the discourse was that it's better to have Sinai bli shalom מאשר shalom bli Sinai. It's better to have the Sinai Peninsula without peace than peace without Sinai Peninsula. That it's now that Golda and the chief generals were saying after the Yom Kippur War that there will be no peace with Egypt in our generation. The public was against negotiation. This was the discourse. But only 4 years after, Sadat came to visit, and Jonathan and you wrote and played this amazing song. But the sesame that will be able to harvest it by machinery never achieved. The Hutu and the Tutsi reconciled. North Ireland, a conflict that lasted hundreds of years. And when I mean speaking to Americans, I'm telling them, do you know who's the most tourists in Vietnam, where they are coming from? From America. Who would dream about it in the late 60s or early 70s? So we must dream about peace. Without a dream, it's never going to happen. And like my Asaf and my father dream about this sesame. Then the second is the values of the sesame. What will be the values of the sesame? High production, will be able to cultivate in Israel, harvested by a machine, by combine harvester, and resilience to climate change. So the values, like I shared with you, the values of the future. You remember the values of the future? Shared acknowledgement and recognition, equality and dignity, reconciliation and healing, security and safety. So my father and Asaf had the values, and then they built a coalition. Universities, researchers, farmers, students, very strong coalition. This is what we are doing now. We are building a coalition. It's the third time I'm in New York this year. Third time.
And when was the last time before? You remember?
Before it, it was like 30 years ago, when I was 18, 31 years ago. But I'm coming here because we are forming a coalition, a very, very powerful coalition. And the fourth step, the roadmap. They build a roadmap, how to cultivate this imaginary dream, this sesame variety. So this is exactly what we are doing. Aziz and I came from 3 days strategy meeting in Switzerland, writing the roadmap. It's not going to be happen. It's not going to be happening without a plan. So we are working on a plan. And the fifth, they executed. And they had a deadline. By 2025, they will harvest this dream. They were ahead of time in a year and a half. 2 weeks after October 7, without my father, this sesame was harvested in Israel. I will read from you from the label. The Yacobi sesame variety was cultivated at the Hebrew University Faculty of Agriculture as a premium high-quality oil variety suited for Israeli farming. The variety is dedicated to the memory of our friend Yacobi Inon, an agronomist, agriculture advisor, worker and lover of the land, known for his knowledge, integrity, and modesty. Amichai, this is for you, if you can come. And this is exactly the step that we're going to make peace by 2030.
באמת לא מצאתי בסופר שמן סוף.
הנה, you got it. You got it.
And it's really good.